Good Sunday morning, and thank you for watching Beyond the Headlines. The stage is set for the March primaries. Both the Republican and Democratic Party have their candidates, and on the ballot are a whole lot of local races, and that's where we're going to start this morning. We start on the Democratic side at the county level. Some of the most highly contested races include Webb County Sheriff, Webb County Tax Assessor Collector, County Attorney, 406 District Judge, and County Constable for Precincts 1, 3, and 4. On the Republican side, these are some of the races we're watching. That includes several candidates seeking the Republican nomination for Texas's 28th Congressional District, which includes a former assistant to the incumbent. There's also the Republican race to flip Texas House District 80, the longtime seat of Tracy King, who announced his retirement earlier this year. Now, some other races of note include the Republican primaries and the presidential race, the Democratic primary on the U.S. Senate side seeking Ted Cruz's seat, and the Democratic race for Texas House District 80. So that's where we're going to begin today's discussion, and making up our full panel this morning, we have from left to right on your screen, starting with the General Manager of KGNS, Luis Villarreal. Anchor, investigative reporter, and my co-anchor, Mindy Caso, KGNS News Director, Jerry Garza, and we have KGNS political contributor, Sergio Mora. Thank you all for being here. Good morning, Ruben.
Good morning.
So I think the biggest, the most eye-opening, the most eye-opening thing we saw in all of this is that Congressman Henry Cuellar will not have someone to run against him in the Democratic primary. Would you all say that is the most surprising thing from what you saw from these initial primary races?
I think so. Yeah. I think the fact that the congressman is not having to face a challenge on his own party says volumes about maybe somebody throwing in the towel and saying, "Hey, we can't win this one, so might as well move on and put our chip somewhere else," yeah. Right? I mean,
I think so too, and I think that we saw that obviously over the last two times that he's run, he's had challenges in the Democratic primary, and I think he at the both of them were so close, nail biters per se, and I think that he probably made some strides over the last 2 years to try to appeal more to, the base, and, he just decided not to do it.
And you talk about the last two times. I mean, it was the same person, right? Jessica Cisneros, and everybody thought that she was going to do it a third time because the first time was close. Yeah. That second time was even closer. And so what would conventional thinking lead you to believe? Well, the third time may be the one that finally, gets her over the top. But I don't think it was necessarily the candidate. I think you've got to look at who was backing the candidate, and you talk about the Justice Democrats and that wing of the Democratic Party, and we've talked about news stories where that the money hadn't been there, losing some maybe some support. Not to say that they're not viable anymore. I certainly don't want to say there, but that may have led to the fact. We don't think that we'd have the resources there to support a candidate like that, and let's just either not go after it and let's look for another one, like you say, or let's regroup and see what happens in a couple of years.
And I remember I'm sorry, Sergio, we did run some stories that they were actually laying off people, just as Democrats, because they were losing funding.
Yeah, so. I read somewhere too that they weren't doing too good. Those two races had very broad national implications. Sure. I mean, you had the Democratic Party, the moderate wing, and the progressive left wing battling it out on a national stage regarding this race. You had Bernie Sanders come down, AOC, Nancy Pelosi for Henry. I mean, it was sort of a proxy battle for the two wings of the Democratic Party. It was a full assault on the progressive wing, trying to unseat Democrats that they deemed not to be liberal enough for their taste. Yeah. And they got really, really close. I mean, but you're talking about national, a lot of national money coming in from all across the country for both sides, and a huge investment for both sides. And I don't think they have the they can't do it anymore.
The most surprising thing to me is the fact that, given how close it was. I mean, the last cycle was, it was literally a few hundred votes. I mean, it was tight. Yes. And so they came so close. And so that is a bit surprising to me, and I don't know how much the changes that have taken place in Congress in general. My hope, and I'll be hopeful here, my hope is that maybe this is a signal that both parties are, the moderate wings of both parties are maybe making some strides and maybe are winning a little bit of the big battle. And
Well, and I think part of it is because we've pretty much had stable executive branch over the last couple of years, and you haven't had that, that situation you had when Donald Trump was president,
That's
where
right.
it was just okay, everyone flew off the handle on both sides, and so there may be some evidence to suggest, what. Stability is good when you don't have somebody who's way over there and way over there. That people tend to come back to the middle. The other thing is, I think that election, the Henry was about $12 million spent total. It was one of the most expensive races that had been run in a while, and maybe the money just wasn't there for people.
absolutely.
Yeah.
On the other side, let's look at the Republican side. Of note is a former assistant to Congressman Cuellar running against him on the Republican side of things. How do you think that affects this race?
I don't think that the Republicans have the numbers to be competitive in this congressional district, although obviously they have been doing a lot better than before. I don't think that the numbers are there for the Republicans to really invest in a serious opponent.
The challenge would have been the primary.
The challenge would have been the primary.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah, all evidence. I mean, the last cycle, obviously the primary was much closer.
Yeah.
Even with a high-profile Republican challenger in the general election.
But you don't give any credence to the fact that he's a former assistant. Perhaps he knows some things that he can use against Cuellar. You don't think that factors into this?
Jessica worked for Henry also, and
Right.
Henry might have to screen his employees a little better. But no, I don't know if there's I don't think that necessarily gives anybody any additional advantage.
I'll tell you that I think it's funny you say that Henry should screen better, but I actually think it's a testament to Henry's leadership that people that have worked under him feel comfortable enough throwing their own hat into the race. So you could look at it both ways.
Definitely, yeah.
And again, I don't know if it's a secret or not, but everybody has always felt that Henry's a moderate and perhaps a little right-leaning, and so. Don't call me Henry. I just mean that with the most respect.
Probably one of the other races that's going to get a whole lot of attention is the race for sheriff. Incumbent Martin Cuellar has 4 people running against him. That's going to show. That's the one most locally that's going to be politically charged, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
And you're already seeing it.
And you're already seeing. I think one of the candidates started campaigning 3 months ago.
It's surprising because it's the race that's very visible. Obviously, there's big names in the race. There's a constable, and there's people that have been involved in law enforcement for a long time. And it's striking because he is an incumbent. He's getting 4 opponents, but then you go down the list and all the rest of the incumbents are not getting an opponent in terms of John Galo, Jesse Gonzalez. You got the county attorney. The county attorney is getting an opponent. Yeah. And then the tax assessor is getting a couple of opponents.
Yeah.
I don't see big names that I recognize in those races, but you never know. It's going to be interesting. If these candidates mount a significant challenge.
And here's the one thing I think his camp, the Cuellar camp, needs to look at is the fact that these are pretty formidable opponents.
Yes.
In their own right. You're talking about people who have a tremendous amount of experience, and you start researching. They've got history in the community. They've run before, and so the biggest issue is going to be what's going to happen in the runoff, because this is certainly going to go into a runoff. Do those 3 team up and go after the incumbent? And if that's the case, I think we have the makings of a really, really, really tight race for sheriff.
You know, we do have another Cuellar in another race, and that's the District 80 state representative. Rosie Cuellar is in that race. So another Cuellar. She's, of course, no stranger to politics, but another Cuellar now running against several people that may not be as well known as the Cuellar name, one of them including a director for Richard Peña Raymond. So another Cuellar, what do you guys think of that?
That's going to be an interesting race. As you know, State Representative Tracy King, who held that position for a long time, is retiring. So it's an open seat. The incumbent isn't getting challenged, so open seats automatically draw in a lot of contenders. That district for Laredo is very interesting because it used to cover a lot bigger part of Laredo. It used to cover all the Mines Road area and the northernmost part of Laredo. Because of redistricting, that part is out, so it's only South Laredo. And then it curves around and covers all of rural Webb County. And then it includes counties like Uvalde, Dimmitt, Frio, Atascosa, and some others. So it's a very rural district, a very diverse district, very large district. So it's going to be very, very interesting.
And I know that they're trying to see if they can flip this district because it has, Tracy King obviously was a Democrat, but there are some folks who think that it could be flipped to a Republican seat, which of course would make the Republicans stronger in the Texas House. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
You're right.
Quick reaction on this question. Are there any names on there that you thought you were going to see that you didn't?
For which position?
Or for anything? I mean, in general, are you surprised that there were some names that weren't there?
On the whole list or in that race?
Pretty much. Anybody that really stood out that you thought, wow, I thought that person was going to run?
Well, I mean, you do hear rumors, but overall, it looks pretty.
Yeah, the interesting thing on that that District 80 race is going to be the fact that when you said, Webb County really only comprises now about 51% of the district, when it used to be much larger. I remember when I ran for that 10 years ago, it was a much larger swath of that was a whole redistricting mess that happened back in 2012. You're not going to have it this year, but it certainly does not. It's going to be very difficult, I think, much more difficult for somebody from Webb County to come out of this one, especially with so many candidates in the race.
Now you have a bunch of
What was the intended result of that particular redistricting?
It's hard to say.
There's always an ulterior motive
I
to
mean,
that
there
particular
are a
lines
lot
and how
of
they're
negotiations
I
that
think
go on.
I think it was to protect Tracy at the time because they made the majority of that district to be his hometown, which is Uvalde, and the surrounding areas, which of course,
and Zapata's out of this district now, which used to be a pretty big component of it.
So I think they made it just a very stronghold for that part of South Texas.
But at the same time, they move it around a lot in that, for example, for the longest time, Tracy didn't represent us. It was Ryan Guillen from Starr County, and then it's Tracy again. So that particular district has been very fluid, volatile over the years. But Mindy, you're right in that district in its current shape, Greg Abbott and Donald Trump won that district by a handful of points each. So it's going to be very interesting because at the same time it is a presidential year and it is South Texas. Democrats do very well in South Texas, even if our top of the ticket doesn't do well. And a great example is when Beto O'Rourke got close to defeating Ted Cruz, he swept in a ton of Democrats to appellate court positions and to a whole bunch of positions. So that's going to be interesting to watch because the Republicans have their eyes on it.
Yeah, and interesting to note, there's 3 Republicans running for that, and one of them is the former mayor of Uvalde, and then there's 5 Democrats running for it. So, it's just going to be a matter of seeing who's going to get out the vote.
All right. When we come back, Texas Democrats in Congress are pushing back against the White House. A fight on funding and borders. Our southern border and Ukraine is making it complicated to get an agreement done to secure more aid to U.S. allies at the expense of receiving border policies Democrats say are a non-starter. Why some Texas Democrats say their party has given up too much? That's next. Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines out of Washington. A deal must be made But Texas Democrats don't like the terms. As the White House and Senate go back and forth on an aid package to Ukraine and Israel, Republicans have used the opportunity to ask for stronger border security provisions in exchange for support. Senate Republicans have asked for changes to asylum rules, deportations, and other policy reforms. Democrats are concerned that the White House is seriously considering those proposals. Texas Democrats, organized by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, met last week in a news conference to voice their displeasure. Representative Henry Cuellar, a member of the caucus, did not attend that conference. However, Congressman Cuellar said both parties needed to get out of their comfort zones to accept a bipartisan deal. According to the Texas Tribune, Cuellar is open to supporting the deal being discussed, which includes greater detention and deportations. The vote for the package is expected this coming week after negotiators work through the weekend. Now, the question here is, if there would be no war in Ukraine, if there would be no war in Israel, why couldn't this topic have been discussed the way it's being discussed now? Why is it now that these countries need aid that the topic comes up?
Yeah, I mean, it's like an extortion tactic. Those two topics shouldn't be linked. They shouldn't hold up the aid for Ukraine.
But it's not extortion. It's negotiating. That is plain old run of the mill negotiating. That's the way it works. You've been involved in Austin more than enough to know that is the way things get done. And it just so happened that this presented itself, and that's how they're going to get to a deal.
They have nothing to do with each other in terms of you're debating the merits of whether we should send money to Ukraine.
Every bill, every vote always has something that has nothing to do with the main subject. But somebody says, "Hey, you want my vote? You're going to need to do this."
They're going to find something to be able to get that vote.
The reality is that these are bigger issues than normal, right? I mean,
they're humongous.
They're humongous issues.
And they're playing on the emotions of people, on the emotions of Israel, emotions of Ukraine.
What bothers me is the comments out there, mainly by the liberal media, talking about how the Republicans are holding this hostage and the Republicans don't want to move. Well, have the Democrats moved? Are the Democrats not in favor? I mean, our own congressman is saying, yeah, we do need to move. We do need to compromise in some sort.
The Democrats have always said we are ready to come to the table to talk about immigration reform. The Republicans only want draconian measures that are punitive. They're doing it They're doing it for the base. They're doing it for elections.
Not draconian,
they are not issues that will
rules
fix
that we've been discussing for 40 years that nobody has ever taken seriously.
Right now,
so maybe now when we're holding up aid for a country that, had it not been for Russia being invaded, we probably wouldn't even be friends with Ukraine anymore. I mean, they're not necessarily the best example of democratic country out there in the world, and so this is. I mean, we want to help someone because of what it's a proxy war.
Wait, hold on.
It's a proxy war. Exactly.
It's a country that invaded its neighbor.
Why don't the Democrats allow us to help Israel without helping Ukraine?
No, the package is for Taiwan, Israel, and Ukraine.
Okay, but if we remove Ukraine and we just talk about Israel,
the thing is,
I'm sure everything gets fixed, right?
The Congress should be like, okay, up for a vote. Do you support, yes or no, the aid for these countries?
Right.
And then you debate the merits of it. Like, you don't say, hey, if you want Ukraine to live, you have to vote for border walls. That is wrong in itself. The fact that the Democrats are saying Republicans fine. What do you need? This is extremely reckless and irresponsible. We have Vladimir Putin on the ropes. This guy
He's not on the ropes. How is he on the ropes?
They have lost 300,000 troops.
And?
His military is destroyed.
And?
Our U.S. military was designed and we spent trillions of dollars a year to be prepared against people like that. His predecessor was Joseph Stalin, who controlled Eastern Europe for generations. These countries...
We already beat them.
NATO exists because of Russia and his expansionism.
Yes.
The fact that he made such an awful blunder in invading Ukraine, and the fact that the world community came together and say, let's get this guy. Now's our chance. And the fact that Ukraine's doing the fighting for us, and it's basically coming on the cheap for us compared to the size of our military, compared to how much we spend in Afghanistan, how much we spend in Iraq. We have the opportunity to defeat this guy that has been working to defeat the world order that the United States built after World War II.
That's a line from a book.
Many books.
Yes.
Many books. Many history books. Yes, it is a line from a book. The thing is, the opportunity to defeat Vladimir Putin, who's been in power 20 years, who murders journalists, who put bounties on American soldiers in the Middle East,
Is it not,
who supports all our
more important
enemies.
to fix our problem here?
Yes, it is.
Look,
we can walk and chew
we
gum at
fix
the
this
same
problem?
time.
And
Well,
why
I
have
think
the
that-
Democrats been
Republicans-
talking about this for 50 years, not being able to fix anything? And now that there's an opportunity to hold them hostage, and let me use your word, I mean, we are, the Republicans are seeing this opportunity as like, hey, finally, we can get something done on the border by holding this
Go
line.
build your walls, and you're going to see that the problem is going to remain exactly the same. They know
don't
it.
want
We
them
know
to
it.
build a
The
wall.
only thing that will fix this issue is addressing the root causes, is immigration reform, is changing the laws on asylum. But the Republicans don't want that. The Republicans want to show their audience, look, I'm going to build walls, I'm going to be really cruel
Do
to
you
these
think-
people, and we're going to fix this problem once
Do
and
you
for all.
think that the average American worker, person, family, middle class cares about Ukraine?
Well,
Do you think that they really care that their livelihood, their day-to-day operation, their children going to school, their crime in their community, all that is affected in any way, shape, or form by what's going on in Ukraine?
you could probably have said the same thing when Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia and said, hey, do
okay,
you
well,
care about what happened there?
Well,
All of a
but-
sudden,
okay.
we're sending millions of
All right,
troops
but
out
look,
there.
we spent the last 7 minutes talking about Ukraine and Israel, and really the issue that really affects most Americans is what's happening right out along the border.
along the border.
And I think that's where we need to be focusing much of our attention. Yes, do we have a role as the world's policeman? I think we have some role because
it's not only the world's policeman,
because
Jerry.
one, it's Ukraine, and then it might be somebody else, and then before you know it, we're in a bigger mess. I think 50 or 70 years ago, the U.S. probably would have wanted to get involved before Pearl Harbor was attacked, right?
It's not the world's policeman.
You want to fix it? Send our American troops and get this over with tomorrow. Why are we? It's like saying, hey, back me up in a fight. Yeah, I'll back you up, but I won't get in it. Get in it. Get this guy out. Let's end the war. We could end it tomorrow. We could end this war tomorrow.
It's
yes,
very tricky
we can.
because they have nukes and we have nukes.
Okay, let's
the thing
end
is
it
that
tomorrow.
Biden's walking an
Stop
extremely
walking on
fine
eggshells, and if what
line.
you really want is to fix this problem, let's throw our weight out there and let's fix this problem and move on. We've been wasting billions and billions and billions upon billions of dollars playing it safe because we don't want to really either get involved. We don't really want to get involved.
The
We
US
just want to keep
military-
spending money.
The U.S. military budget is trillions of dollars, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, and we have them standing ready to fight these kinds of wars. When the world order that we sit on top
let's
of
take the gloves off and let's go finish
threatened,
this.
It's this war for the United States is a godsend in terms of we're not doing the fighting, we're arming, we are testing, we are testing our technology
People are
out
still
there.
dying. They're still dying in Gaza. They're still dying, and we keep a little bit here. Let's a little bit there. It's like, okay, so we're so mighty and so powerful, and we really want to end these conflicts. Let's go end them or get out of the way.
All right.
Ukraine is the second largest country in Europe. It's the
When we come
largest
back.
food producer. It has tremendous natural resources in Russia.
When we come back, we'll take a look back at the one thing our panelists cannot stop thinking about from the past week. Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. It's the one thing our panelists cannot stop thinking about from the past week. Sergio.
Well, last week, the Dean of the Texas Senate, Senator John Whitmire from Houston, won the mayorship of the city of Houston, so he is leaving the Senate,
Wow.
which makes our own state senator, Judy Saffarini, the new Dean of the Texas Senate.
Wow.
And so she is the first in seniority. It comes with a lot of perks and duties. And it's a pretty big deal. John Whitmire, for the longest time, everybody was like the Dean of the Senate, Dean of the Senate. Well, now our own state senator is now officially in January when
When he
takes
gets sworn
the
in.
oath of
Well,
office. Yeah, so congratulations to her. She's been looking forward to it for a while, and now it's here. So
Jerry?
congratulations.
This is from the file of here's something you don't see every day. A bull steer was seen going down the railroad track in Newark, New Jersey. They don't know where the bull came from, how it got loose, or what happened, but it kind of stalled traffic out for about an hour and a half in Newark. They finally corralled it, took it to an animal sanctuary, but Yeah, it was probably a bull run.
Mindy?
We get that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, for us, last weekend, it was menudo you can count on. And I just want to say congratulations to our KGNS team. We took home the third place prize for Best Menudo. This was the annual Laredo Harley-Davidson Menudo Cook-Off. It took place last Saturday. I also, hats off to the guys who make the trophies. The trophies are also different. They are made from parts of motorcycles. They put them together and kind of put just a first, second, or third place. But they're just unique. You don't see them very often. So congratulations to that's
Very
it.
cool.
So the first place was the skull. The second place was the one next to it with the green motorcycle, and then we are the third place with the clock on top. So
I am going to forego my one thing until next time so that Luis can finish off with this amazing story.
Hey, obviously, just this week was a very special week for all of us here at KGNS. We had the opportunity to unveil our new facilities. We had the presence of our corporate leadership here and a bunch of our friends from the community. It was a magnificent occasion, and it was the culmination of a lot of work over the past 3 years, but it's been rewarding and finally here. And I don't know what I'm going to do next week since I've been doing this for 3 years. So I'm done. But thank you for everybody that joined us. Thank you for everybody that's been involved. Thank you, guys. I know we had to take a hiatus for a little bit there while we were doing this, but it was awesome.
But this is what we have now.
This is what we have now. So.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed Sunday.